Well, I'm going to talk about my biggest settlement ever, which was $3.9 million for one of the saddest cases I've ever handled. It was a medical malpractice case. My client went to a local hospital up in the Capital District for a routine thyroidectomy, totally elective procedure. Took the bus by herself that morning to the hospital. Surgery was uncomplicated. The doctor successfully removes the thyroid. The hospital was very busy that day. They could not get her to a bed on the admitting floor. And so they left her in the post-anesthesia care PACU unit for like 5 hours, which is a very long PACU stay. It's an uncomfortable environment. It's very busy. There's no privacy. The bed is like a OR bed. It's not like a comfortable admitting bed. And she had complained of like tightness in her throat. They finally, after 5 hours, get her a room, and they call a technician to move this woman from the basement level of the hospital, which is where the operating department was, to the 5th floor. I'll never forget deposing the technician and just how scared she looked, even just telling the story. And the technician wheels our client down the hallway to the elevator. Elevator door opens. She pulls the bed onto the elevator. The door closes. And as the elevator starts to go up, our client sits up, writhing on the bed, grabbing at her chest and her neck, I'm sorry. So the elevator finally gets to the 5th floor. This technician wheels the client down the hall, screaming for help. Everybody runs to her. They call like a code blue on the floor. And then all the respiratory therapy comes. A physician comes. The physician was ultimately the negligent party. And he says, transfer her down to the ICU. Now, she's grabbing at her neck. She's bleeding at her neck. No one would concede blood until I think it was like the 18th deposition. Remember, I took all those things.
Oh, yeah.
The nurse, and she was like a supervisory nurse, had been doing this for a long time, and she wasn't going to lie for the hospital, said she saw blood coming. So the proper thing to do would have been to stabilize the patient in the hallway at the floor, control this situation, but instead they send her down to the elevator, down from the 5th floor to the 4th floor to the 3rd floor, get her off of the elevator, wheel her down the hallway into the ICU. All this time she's like gasping for air. They get her into the ICU. They transfer her out of the bed. They have to call another code level. An anesthesiologist comes and intubates her. But by then, minutes had gone by and she suffered an anoxic brain injury. And so we all worked together. We filed this big case against the hospital. It was a lot of work. It was 18 depositions, I think. This woman had really awful losses. We went to trial, settled in like the 2nd or 3rd day of trial for, I think, like $3.85 million, which wasn't enough, which was not enough for this woman whose life essentially ended. I mean, she didn't die, but she suffered awful. She was bedridden the rest of her life. But we fought for her, and she wanted to accept the settlement. She wanted to move on. She wanted to secure the money for her family. That was arguably one of the most powerful cases that I've touched so far, I think, and in terms of my experience and feeling like I was doing good, and I feel like we made the hospital safer, and the one doctor who decided to move her really screwed up. And I'm from my perspective, I thought that I hope this doctor knows, don't ever do that again. Like when someone can't breathe, just figure the problem out right then and there. And that's just a medical malpractice case that I'll never forget.